Imagine waking up one day and poof, your parents have vanished. And now you have to survive with your wrinkly grandparents that are wackier than a monkey on booze. Yep, welcome to Arnold's story. But where the hell did his parents go? I swear there are like 1,000 theories out there, and yeah, all of them date before the Jungle movie was released, which pretty much explained everything, but we'll get to that later, and honestly I think these theories deserve a feature. So basically after watching Hey Arnold again, I found some odd things about Arnold's parents. One of the most popular theories is that his parents might have actually died of drug overdoses after he was born. Yeah, maybe a stretch, but hear me out. This is exactly why Arnold's head is the football shape. It came from an odd birth defect due to the way Arnold's parents died. His grandparents, never having the heart to tell Arnold the truth, came up with stories where his parents were great heroes. In the last episode, they even tell Arnold that his parents took off in a plane and never came back, and that the plane was never found. Well, the plane was never found because Steely Phil, the grandfather, was using it as a metaphor for how Arnold's parents really died. Like, by getting high. Get it? Honestly, some even go as far as to speculate that his grandparents are the parents, and because they had Arnold at an older age, that is the reason behind his odd head.
We have a baby?
Pookie, I got a roll of tape and I'm not afraid to use it.
And of course, because of their ages, they don't want him to be butt of more jokes, as if he doesn't get that already, and so they pretend to be the grandparents and not the parents. This, by the way, was a pretty popular theory. However, we know that it's not the truth because the series gives us the much needed closure. Drum roll for the revelation, please. Well, you see, Arnold's parents were named Miles and Stella Shortman, and they were super into adventure and helping folks, like curing diseases. Now, Stella was deep in the jungles of San Lorenzo, studying plants to find cures for jungle sicknesses, when Miles kinda just tumbled into her life, like literally, and the two became a couple. They started going on adventures together, and their first stop was a temple. But the real deal happened during a hike up San Lorenzo's tallest peak, where they slipped and ended up taking a tumble down a waterfall and landing in a fish-catching contraption. Turns out this net thing wasn't your average fishing gear. It was made by these mysterious folks called the Green-Eyed People, who were the original San Lorenzo dwellers. So, to make things square with the Green Eyes after their waterfall adventure, Stella and Miles decided to help them retrieve their super important relic, the Corazon, from this river pirate and treasure hunter named La Zombra. They managed to snatch it back, and as a big thank you, the Green Eyes welcomed them into their crew. And not long after, Stella and Miles had a pretty cool wedding at this super ancient Mayan temple. Oh, a stunning wedding venue, but here's the twist. While they were off on their honeymoon in Brazil, the Green Eyes caught the sleeping sickness. Stella and Miles had to step up and whip up an antidote to save the day. Lucky for them, they pulled it off and saved the Green Eyes from the sickness just in the nick of time. And not long afterwards, Stella found out that she was gonna be a mom. So a few months down the road, baby Arnold arrived. She named him after her dad, who had passed away, but since the jungle life was pretty risky, Stella and Miles decided it was time to head back to Hillwood. However, about a year later, Eduardo showed up again, asking them to take on the one last mission in San Lorenzo. So they packed up and left, and guess what? They never came back. Nobody knew what happened to Stella and Miles for the next 9 to 10 years. It was a real mystery. In the Jungle movie, we finally got the closure we had all been craving for when Arnold found out that his parents had actually caught this sleeping sickness that's kinda like a super long nap. The big reveal happened when Arnold, Helga, Gerald, and Eduardo stumbled upon the Green Eyes City. That's when they realized that Stella and Miles got sick before they could hand out the medicine and come back home. And that got me thinking, like, if they had the cure, why didn't they use it? Or if the sickness was already gone, how did they get it again? Well, here's the kicker. The Corazon, that important lyric, got lost again. Whoa, for something so precious, it goes missing way too often. So even though Stella, Miles, and the other grown-ups were technically alive, they could only wake up with the Corazon, which was nowhere to be found. And then things got even weirder because Helga had to use her locket as a stand-in for the Corazon, and guess what? It worked. And Arnold and all other kids got to reunite with their now awake parents. I'm just as baffled as you, dude, but the bottom line is that a few months later, Stella and Miles turned out to be totally alive and back home with Arnold. He woke up one morning for his first day of 6th grade, and bam, the reunion we've all been waiting for finally happened. It was seriously perfect. They were, like, really truly back. Alright, now good ending, but let's rewind a bit because throughout the show, Arnold, as I said before, lives with his paternal grandparents, Phil and Gertie, and on top of them being wacky characters, he also has to live in this maybe below average boarding house named Sunset Arms. It's owned by Phil and passed down from his father. You'd be surprised to know that the place has a rich history. Like, it was a center of rebellion during the American Revolution. However, despite that, the building is super poorly maintained. I mean, it doesn't even have central air conditioning, and the boarders have to gather around a window air conditioner only to have it conk out as a result of a brownout from the heat wave. Nevertheless, the setting of the show is the multiracial boarding house in a nameless city that resembles Brooklyn, New York. And Arnold, the daydreaming, jazz-loving, football-headed 9-year-old protagonist, encounters life in this very city with his best friend Gerald, a loofah-haired kid who is the keeper of the urban tales and the coolest kid in class, and also Helga, who torments the hell out of him but also secretly loves him. The whole evolution of love between the two is pretty prominent. I mean, Helga has had a crush on Arnold since the two had first met. Thanks to her unstable family upbringing, where both her mother and father constantly neglected her and showered all of their attention onto Olga, Helga's spoiled sister. I swear, I hate this favorite kid game the parents play. So of course, they left her deprived of the love and attention that she needed growing up. The girl is so distant that she even calls her parents by their first names. And like a sort of running gag throughout the show is that her parents literally forget how old she is, with her flatly correcting them. Bob, the dad, seems to think Helga is about 5 to 7 years old, while Miriam seems to think she's 8. Wow, even the mother? But when corrected, she did seem horrified to have forgotten how old her daughter is. Still no sympathy though. When Helga was just 2 years old, on her way to preschool, Arnold shared his umbrella with her in the rain and even complimented her hair bow. Plus, he handed her some crackers during snack time. So because of Arnold's kindness and being the first one to notice her, Helga quickly started liking him a whole lot. But here's the twist. When the other kids saw this and started making fun of her for having a soft spot for Arnold, she decided to put on a tough act to avoid all that teasing and embarrassment. Another reason she bullies Arnold sometimes is because she's afraid he won't like her back, which makes sense. And honestly, she can't help feeling a bit jealous when he crushes on other girls. And let me tell you, this guy has a decent list of the girls he has had a crush on. Bro keeps going on and on. But still, Helga tries to mess things up whenever Arnold gets close to another girl, and she's super clingy when it comes to her feelings for him. She literally can't stop thinking about him, like all the time, to the point where it's kinda like an obsession. I mean, she's known for making tons of shrines and writing poems about Arnold, and she's got these dramatic moments where she talks to herself about how much she loves him. But she does try to better herself and catch Arnold's eye, even if her efforts often backfire. But anyway, Helga is totally dedicated to Arnold and is ready to do whatever it takes to help him out, even if it means sacrificing something or taking a big risk. Sometimes she helps him out without even taking credit for it and doesn't let him know that she's been there for him, just because making Arnold happy is enough for her. In the meantime, Arnold had no clue about Helga's feelings for him throughout the series, even though there were pretty obvious hints dropped right in front of him. In the first season, he mostly saw Helga as a bit of a bother more than anything else, but Arnold did seem to get interested in Helga whenever she acted all nice, and he had some dreams that really spilled the beans on his feelings. In one of his dreams, he was totally smitten with Hilda, who's pretty much the real Helga when she's not being mean. There was even this one episode where he had a nightmare about marrying Helga, but in the end of the dream, he confronted her and basically told her that he knew she wasn't really all lazy, cold, and uncaring, and that she's actually a kind person. In her dream, Helga even kinda admitted that deep down, she really likes him and almost spilled the beans on her love before she woke up. So yeah, it's like Arnold subconsciously knows that Helga has a crush on him and that she's only meant to hide her true self. Plus, there are plenty of hints dropped here and there that suggest Arnold knows about Helga's tough family situation. One interesting thing about this show is that while Arnold is the main character, there are many episodes where the spotlight shifts to other important characters. And honestly, Helga gets so much screen time that when you think about it, she's the only one on the show who ever gets to have a monologue. She's the character dealing with some pretty deep inner stuff related to growing up and figuring out herself. Even the show's name comes from something Helga said. In nearly every episode, they pause the main plot to let her go on and on about her feelings for Arnold. While Arnold is the one who often presents moral dilemmas in the show, it's Helga that young viewers can relate to when it comes to dealing with relationships. It's tough to express your feelings for someone of the opposite gender when you're young, and Helga is the perfect example of that struggle. I often find myself silently rooting for her, even though she tends to mess things up for herself. But you've probably noticed how they don't really give any other character a strong focus unless it's a special episode. Her monologues are what really gave it away for me. It's almost as if the show is told from her perspective, but it's easy to miss because everything seems to point to Arnold. The title has his name, he appears to be the main character in many episodes, and he's the one who usually delivers the moral lesson. But in reality, I think Hey Arnold is a show that's all about Helga Pataki. And then let's not forget about Gerald, the super cool guy. He mainly takes on the role of the storyteller in the 4th grade gang, and his stories often set the stage for those urban legend episodes. This dude has a ton of knowledge for a kid his age and knows everything about Hillwood and its residents, some of which he's picked up from his mysterious buddy, Fuzzy Slippers. Honestly, nobody, including me, has a clue who this Fuzzy Slippers character is because they never show up or do anything. It's just something Gerald mentions every now and then, and it makes his character seem pretty shady, but in the end, they might as well be just a neighborhood friend. Most of the time though, Gerald comes across as this chill, friendly, laid-back kid. He's also a seriously caring and loyal friend. He often plays the voice of reason in the group of 4th grade pals and balances out Arnold's always positive attitude. Plus, the guy's got some sharp fashion sense, except for his wild hair. But hey, who in Hey Arnold actually has decent hair? So when Arnold and Gerald met Connie and Maria at the pool, these 2 older girls in the 6th grade, it was Gerald's fashion tips that kept them looking sharp. Little did they know that Connie and Maria were only doing this to make their real boyfriends jealous. Ah, these mean girls, but at least the guys look good, right? Gerald's got quite the adult-like conscience too. In one episode, he decided to be independent and live the high life. Not the same kind of high life as Arnold's parents, but the money high life. He tried to make some cash by selling wacko watches, but when he actually did it, he ended up stuck with a load of watches and nobody to buy them. Naturally, having a kid out on his own had its consequences, and it turned out that the wacko watches distributor was a complete crook who operated out of a rundown building. The guy's only goal was to unload a ton of unsold watches on Gerald and make his parents bail him out. Thanks to Arnold, they got back at this crook by helping Gerald to get rid of the merchandise. Now, you'd think that for a kid who woke up to his parents suddenly gone, Arnold must have some things to deal with, like Helga does too, right? But actually, no. He's largely stable throughout the whole series, and honestly, the credit goes to none other but the grandparents that raised them. Plus, Arnold's grandparents are literally the brimming comedic characters of the whole thing. Phil, Arnold's cheerful and good-hearted and kind grandfather, also known as Steely Phil, runs the Sunset Arms boarding house, but whether he can get the boarders to pay the rent is always up in the air. You see, it's a bit uncertain because, except for maybe Mr. Smith, it seems like none of these folks make enough money to live anywhere with their very own bathroom. Even though Phil often gives not-so-great advice and can be a bit of a goof, he's actually a fantastic grandpa. He's got a soft spot for Arnold, and anyone who doesn't love the kid is not in Phil's good books. But don't let his goofiness and age fool you, because our good old granddad has accomplished quite a bit in his lifetime. I mean, seriously, he was a private in World War II, and through a strange twist of fate, he's the one who took down a whole company of German troops, paving the way for the American forces heading to the Battle of the Bulge. And according to him, he is the guy who duked it out with Adolf Hitler or Joseph Goebbels. I know it sounds wild, but let's just indulge the old man and let him enjoy his moments, alright? And turns out he was also a champion Chinese checkers player, and he tied for first place with his longtime checkers rival in the last city tournament, which is exactly how he got the nickname Steely Phil. But even then, this usually jolly old grandpa has his moments of pessimism. There was this one time when Phil claimed that every man in his and Arnold's family is doomed to pass away at 81, which was just a few days away from him. So he kind of went about life like it was his last moments. But when he actually turns 81 and doesn't kick the bucket, that's when Arnold figures out that the family curse is actually 91 and not 81. So presumably he's got another 10 more years to enjoy. Pretty good deal, right?
I'm not going to die!
However, his doctor, after Arnold convinces him to get a checkup, tells him that not only he is the healthiest 80-year-old he's ever seen and has the strength of an ox, but he could theoretically live to be a whopping 150. Talk about impressive. But you know what's even more fun? Phil's wife, Gertie. She's always lively and a bit eccentric. She dresses in all sorts of crazy outfits, cooks up different foods, and gives people funny nicknames, like calling Arnold Kimba and Helga Eleanor Roosevelt. Like, where did she come up with that one? Anyway, Gertie is super cheerful and seems to approach everything with the same level of excitement. Her wild behavior might be because of old age, but sometimes it feels like she's just playing around. She can be pretty serious when she needs to be though. Now, even though Phil is strong for his age, Gertie is even more active and capable. She's a black belt in martial arts and can handle big tasks like fixing the subway's wiring, driving a bulldozer, or escaping from prison. Everything about her is just so colorful and lively. One day she's a mermaid, the next she's a cowgirl named Calamity Pookie, so don't be surprised if you see her in some other crazy outfits. Plus, these two cool grandparents even have a sweet little love story. Phil and Gertie were actually in the same class when they were kids during the Great Depression. Believe it or not, Gertie had a huge crush on Phil. She used to show it by teasing him, kinda like how Helga does with Arnold nowadays. But then, Phil had to drop out of school because his family needed his help during those tough Depression times. Jobs were scarce, so sadly, Phil never finished elementary school. But here's the heartwarming part. They eventually ended up together, and in one episode, he even went back to school with Arnold and managed to complete his 6th grade. Now, how adorable is that? The show's got tons of adventures where Arnold and his crew get into all sorts of funny stuff. Take, for example, the time when Helga had this major freakout about not being girly enough. There was this girl, Rhonda, who threw a slumber party and invited pretty much every girl in the neighborhood except for poor Helga. Why? Just because she didn't think Helga was girly, and even Helga's best friend forever, Phoebe, joined in on the giggles. Ouch, right? And then some random strangers mistook Helga for a dude. Double ouch. So Helga decided to go on this mission to femme herself up. But let me tell you, it didn't go too smoothly. She ended up scaring the daylights out of kids with this clownish makeover. Eventually though, she does get the perfect feminine look down and even catches the eye of some guys who were spying on her undercover. But here's the twist, that wasn't really her. So when she saw Phoebe all sad over seeing her changed, Helga went right back to being herself. Plus, those spying dudes got busted big time as well. Another pretty wholesome and key moment in the series is when on Christmas, Arnold got Mr. Hume's name in the boarding house's Secret Santa. Now this guy had a pretty lonely life, so Arnold wanted to make it the best Christmas ever for him. He even tried to help Mr. Hume find his daughter, whom he hadn't seen in 20 years. You see, Mr. Hume used to live in a small village in South Vietnam with his daughter named Mai. They knew they had to leave because of the war up north, and during the chaos of people trying to leave the country, there was only space for one more person on a helicopter. So Mr. Hume let Mai go to America for a better life, and they got separated. It took Mr. Hume about 20 years to come to America, and he chose this city since he heard that's where they were taking Mai. But they still hadn't met, and all he wanted was to see his daughter again. The little guy did his level best to somehow get Mai to her father, but failed. So on Christmas Day, Arnold was feeling kinda bummed out, and Mr. Hume didn't get a Secret Santa gift. But guess what? Right when Arnold started explaining what he was trying to do, the doorbell rang, and it was actually Mai at the door. Can you believe it? Nobody knows how that happened, but I guess it was a real Christmas miracle. Oh, and there are more adventures, like that time Arnold and Gerald wanted everyone in the city to turn off their lights to see Sally's comet, and when Arnold visited his cousins Arnie and literally discovered personality counterparts of his classmates, including Leela as Lulu and Helga as Hilda. But now, let me tell you the coolest part of this series. That is, the show has some dark undertones as well. The episodes aren't like total nightmare material, but they do have some spooky parts. Like when Arnold and Gerald started working at a flower shop and got into this big fight because Gerald got to be in charge. It's mostly a sweet moment where they realize their friendship matters more than a silly argument, but here's the weird thing. Arnold had this dream where they're old dudes and they're still fighting, and even Grandpa Phil turned into a zombie. Damn, that was kinda creepy, and it's one of the scariest moments in the whole series, even though it was just like a quick thing. Plus, the show's got some episodes that are kinda heavy for kids stuff too. Like the time Arnold helped out a classmate who was seriously hooked on chocolate and needed to quit. It's often seen as one of the goofiest and funniest episodes ever, but here's the thing, it's pretty dark when you think about it. A kids show tackling a kid dealing with addiction. And there are some pretty unsettling scenes in the episode that show how far people go when they are dealing with an addiction. Another similar episode was when one of Arnold's classmates, Gerald, overheard some other kids teasing him about his size. So what does Harold do? He starts chowing down on diet food like crazy. Thankfully, Arnold stepped in and helped him get back to his usual size and reminded Harold that the only person he needs to make happy is himself. But yeah, even though there's a good lesson in this episode, it also shows how tough dealing with eating issues can be and the dangers of eating disorders. But you know what? Sometimes the show takes those darker things and turns them into valuable lessons, and I'm totally on board with that. There's this one time when we got to see why Helga is so fixated on Arnold. It happens when she's sent to mandatory therapy at school. Yeah, I know, Helga's Arnold obsession is kinda creepy, but this episode goes deeper and talks about more grown-up stuff and highlights how important mental health is when Helga and the therapist chatted about her feeling ignored. Another lesson was when they brought in Arnold's famous crush, Leela Sawyer. Now, she starts off as a regular student, a sweet new kid who's getting picked on by some jealous girls, but by the end of the episode, her classmates feel pretty bad for her. Why? Because they find out that she lives in a not-so-great apartment with her single dad, who's having a hard time keeping things together. It's one of those don't judge a book by its cover stories that show us people can be more than just what they seem. Plus, it touches on some serious stuff like being low on money, job struggles, and not having enough to eat. So that was the wacky world of Hey Arnold and my 2 cents into the conversation. Now what a show, it delivers some wacky, entertaining moments while also leaving space to think about some serious stuff too. Anyway, what do you think? Was it among your favorites when you were little? Let us know down in the comments, and as for everything else, if you enjoyed it, drop us a like and subscribe to our channel for more awesome tunes like this recapped on your feed. As always, thanks for watching. Peace!